Attorney Tammy Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope I'll get a chance to propound just two questions. Mr. Fein, about a year ago, I had the good fortune of seeing an appearance of yours and a constituent of mine, John Nichols, on the Bill Moyers Journal show. Since we're plugging books, my constituent John Nichols is the author of The Genius of Impeachment, the Founder's Cure for Royalism. And it was during that show, Mr. Nichols used a metaphor that I have found it stuck with me, and I know it's stuck with many others, and I'm just going to quote it for you. He said, let's say that when George Washington chopped down the cherry tree, he used the wood to make a little box. And in that box, the president put his powers. We've taken things out, and we've put things in over the years. On January 20th, 2009, if this administration is not appropriately held to account, they will hand off a toolbox with more powers than any president has ever had, more powers than the founders could ever have imagined. And that box will be handed to the next president. Whoever gets it, one of the things we know about power is that people don't give away tools. They don't give them up. The only way we take tools out of that box is if we sanction this administration now and say the next president cannot govern as these men have. Mr. Fein, as you may recall, you responded to Mr. Nichols with the observation that Congress has, to the contrary, seemingly given up its powers voluntarily. Could you briefly elaborate on that answer?
Well, the reason why, the way in which Congress has surrendered the power is simply by being unresponsive to the president's usurpations, like claiming executive privilege to say he doesn't have to respond to oversight requests, really expanding the president's authority with the FISA amendments, passing the Military Commissions Act, which is perhaps the most sweeping delegation of authority ever given to any president at any time, any place, and acquiescing and signing statements. If there's no rebuke to these claims of power, that's a surrender. And perhaps one of the most dangerous ones, I think, is I think this body tacitly has accepted the idea the president can initiate war on his own. He can extend the war against terrorism into Iran if he thinks that's critical. And that's something the Founding Fathers have been shocked about. They said no one man should ever take us into war.
Thank you, and that leads directly into my second question. Certainly based on what I've observed in the last 7.5 years of this administration, I can honestly say that I have serious concerns about what I may yet see in the remaining 6 months of this administration. I have no reason to believe that the conduct that we've been focusing on today has stopped. I am finding some very disturbing and eerie similarities in my mind between the behavior and rhetoric of this administration during the lead up to the war in Iraq and the behavior and rhetoric of this administration regarding Iran. As one example, the administration seems to be disregarding national intelligence estimates again. I would like to ask the two witnesses who I heard reference Iran in their testimony what impact an impeachment inquiry or other congressional action might have on the conduct of this administration from this day forward. And so I direct that question to Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bugliosi.
I don't think if this administration is bent on attacking Iran that anything short of criminal sanctions is going to stop them. I think there needs to be criminal legislation passed with severe sanctions for anyone who causes an attack against Iran, inconsistent with our Constitution or the United Nations Charter, without the explicit consent of Congress.
Your question is whether an impeachment proceeding would deter this president from invading Iran?
The question is whether an impeachment inquiry or other congressional action, what impact do you think it will have on this administration's conduct moving forward?
Well, I think you've learned from me today, if anything, that I only deal with evidence and the facts, and you're asking me for just speculation. I have no answer to your question. Thank you.